Hey everyone, welcome to the new media show. My name is Todd Cochran. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee, and we've got a special guest today, Rob.
Yes, we do. Danny Pena has joined us. Hall of Fame
Hello.
podcaster, Gamertag radio. He's been around the medium a long time. I first met Danny when I was working at Microsoft, and he was getting into podcasting in the early days of the medium, and he's always been a great and positive individual, and we're always honored to have him on the show. So you're such a great evangelist
Thanks,
in
man.
the podcasting
I'm surrounded
space,
by legends.
Danny.
I'm surrounded by legends, man.
Well, you are.
I appreciate it so much.
You are one of the legends. Yeah, you're.
What's that?
He's a legend in his. I shouldn't say in his own right because that's kind of an egg. No, you're a legend in podcasting as well, Danny. Don't shortchange yourself.
Right.
Thanks a lot, man. I haven't been on here. It's been a couple of years. I think the last time I was on, I was promoting my documentary that I made a long time ago. It was like 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that was.
So, didn't you just have you had something big happen recently, right? Didn't you?
Yes, it's been a couple things since last year, due to the situation that we're in right now. I've been, creating more content more than ever at home, remotely. And just a couple weeks ago, I had Keanu Reeves on our show and also interviewed him for Telemundo. Yeah, it was for a game called Cyberpunk 2077 that just came out back in early December. So I had him on. That was like super random. I was not expecting that to happen, but it was good. Seeing podcasting is always, you always get surprises like that, man, So that's one. Another one is actually at the end of this month. It's going to be my 20th year as a content creator. Because back then, I know Rob used to do the same thing back then, but I used to do internet radio back in the early 2000s, before podcasting. So I have a lot of the old content from back then, and I'm planning to releasing it throughout the year. And also next month is our 16th year on Gamertag Radio. So I'm very excited to announce what we have planned for next month. That's going to be pretty big for us too. So very, very exciting.
You guys have been at it for a while. You've got a team. You guys have really been knocking it out of the park for a long time and being on the leading edge. And so you guys are approaching 16 years. She said next month?
Next month, yeah, February 25th.
So you guys started in 05 then, which...
Yes.
Yeah.
05. Yeah. Like I said earlier, I used to do the internet radio, but I didn't know how to do podcasting back in 04 or 05. So I had to download an RSS feed from one of my friends that had a podcast, and I had to manually change everything to my podcast in there. And that's how I learned everything, through just doing like that, and just depending on the third-party applications that was back then available. And I know there was a Podcast Pickle, there was a Podcast Alley. So I was depending on that. So when I found out, I think it was in July of 2005, that's when iTunes added podcasting to the platform. And that helped us out a lot back then to get even more listeners, But the tricky part was telling people that they could listen to the show just through the computer without having an iPod. People thought that they needed a device just to listen to podcasts at that time. So it was crazy, but now it's a lot easier now.
Sometimes I wish people would still have to manually create their RSS feed the first time, but I'm joking.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how many times I broke my RSS feed though, because I put the wrong comma character into my RSS feed. Right.
Yeah.
But I'm just reflecting back. It's been an incredible ride, and I'm going to hit 1,500 episodes on my personal show on Thursday. And wow, it's just like you start doing the math on how many hours you put in per episode and all the stuff that goes along with it, and then you kind of do I did a rough calculation a couple of years ago of how many listener hours people had actually listened to the podcast, and when you're in the millions of listening hours, or tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of listening hours for people that listen to your show, I think, Danny, you probably can attest to this as more than anyone, because you built this amazing community. You guys are in your fans' heads like hardcore. So you've had huge influence on the gaming community, and you guys have done stuff before. We've done meetups and had huge numbers of people show up. So I think a lot of podcasters could take some lessons from what you guys do.
Yeah, and I learned that when I used to be involved with the music industry back in the 90s. The face-to-face interaction, man, that is like, to me, the most powerful thing. I know right now we can't do that. I hope we could do that in the future. But I miss that. That's one thing that I truly, truly miss about last year, is just seeing my friends, meeting up with our community members everywhere. Like, I even have stories of just me going to the store, Best Buy or Walmart, and people, they're like, "Hey, Danny," randomly will come up to me saying, "Hey, I listened to your show." There was even one story that years ago, my co-host, we got invited to go to Paris, in France, to check out like a game over there for a studio, and my co-hosts were flying back from Paris to the States, and there was a listener there in the same flight. He's like, "Hey guys, I'm a huge fan. I just want to say hello." So you never know who listens to you, man. You never know. I think just because you're not getting that email or that comment to your blog or your YouTube channel or whatever, like, there's people that listen to you and they just stay quiet. Maybe they're just too shy to interact with you, so you just got to give it time to people, man. Like, I still to this day, I have people that will contact me and my crew saying, "Long time listener, first time caller," first time contacting you guys. So you just got to give them time, man, for people to open up and hit you up, So, hey, even if it's only a download, that to me, that's good, So
I think too is, and maybe Rob can attest to this. Where I've gotten, I wouldn't say accosted. It's not accosted. That's the wrong word to use. But in Chicago, I go through Chicago Airport. I've met more of my listening audience in Chicago at O'Hare than anywhere else, because they see you walking and they come over and kind of like, "Todd," and you're kind of like, "Who are you?" And they know you, but you don't know them. But very quickly, you kind of connect, and it's cool to have those moments. But yeah, wow. So 16 years. You guys are definitely OG as well.
Right. So Danny, how did you adapt to this big change of not being able to get in front of people? I know, Todd and I and many in the industry have, converted everything to doing online type stuff. Is that the same thing that you've done as well? What's been your experience, and how do you see us coming out of all this?
Well, when it comes to creating content, we've been getting a lot of companies hitting us up for us to play their games early, but the way how we play it is through cloud streaming. So they have the game available at a server, and we'll play the games through the PC, and we'll get, they capture it locally, and they'll send us the video content, maybe like the same day or a couple of days later. So from there, we could talk about the content on the podcast. We could post the videos on different social media platforms, like stuff like that. We've been doing a lot. Another thing too is just having conversation of what's going on. Like, I do that all the time with my co-host. But one of the things that helped us out last year too was when we were about to hit like 1,000 episodes, and I had the head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, back in February, and while he was in Japan, he tweeted that he himself announced that he was going to be on our show without us saying anything. And he linked to the podcast, linked to all of our accounts, and people were super surprised, because that was the beginning of Xbox marketing their next gen console. Before they went to like a major media outlet, they went to us first. So we were the first group to start having that conversation with Xbox, and we had a sit down with him for like almost 45 minutes, and it went viral. A lot of the major media outlets picked it up. The non-gaming sites, like Forbes and those like tech blogs picked it up too. So doing things like that, I think, helped us to get more opportunities. So a lot of the other companies been contacting us to do interviews, to do hands-on. We even got the Xbox console a month before it even came out. So we got it. I got it like October 1st, and my co-host too. And the console came out around November. So we had a whole month of just hands-on impressions, talking about different games. How was the experience? And one thing that I did, because I'm always about getting my community involved. We have a first responder in New York City that he's a huge gamer. He's a huge fan of our show, and I wanted to do something special. So I asked Microsoft if it was okay for him to get hands-on to the system for the first time, and I wanted him to be the first consumer to get that experience, right? So I told him, hey, I'm going to be in the studio in New York. We're going to do a meetup. So I totally surprised him. We had cameras everywhere. And he went there not knowing what was going to happen. He thought we was going to meet up, get together. And I told him, hey, look, you're going to be the first consumer in the world to get hands-on on the Xbox console. And I want you to just have a great time for like an hour, play it, change the games, whatever you want. And at the end of this, we're going to have a conversation. So we posted that video online. That video went viral. And I also recorded a podcast, a one-on-one sit-down with him. And he was telling me his story, like how was it before getting to the studio? How was it playing with the console and everything? So there's different ways to create content. It doesn't always have to be interviews, you know? So I always like to think outside of the box and also try to get my community involved. So another thing that I did too, when the country shut down, I asked a question to our community on the podcast, like, what is the game that you're playing right now that's helping you during quarantine? And tell us why, so other people could try it out and do the same thing. So people have been sending us voicemails, emails, and we've been posting it, and it felt like everybody was in together, man. Nobody felt like left out, you know. So that was something really cool that happened throughout 2020 for us.
I do have to ask, when you get the Xbox a month before it's available, and you've signed your life away, I'm sure you've signed NDAs.
Oh yes, a lot of NDAs.
You know, a lot of legal lease. What kind of box does it come in? Does it come a...
This one was the retail box, the official retail.
Yeah.
So
wow.
So this what happened. I got the retail box, and they told me we could do it unboxing, but I can't release it. I can't release it to like closer to launch. So I had it for like almost a whole month, that video. But what I was allowed to talk about, like certain features, how was the playing certain games. So every game had a different embargo. So I had different embargoes for like almost every week.
Wow.
2-3 games. Yeah. Or different features I was allowed to talk about the console. So it was new. It was new to Microsoft too, because they have never done that. Usually companies send us products maybe like 2 weeks in advance.
Right.
But I think, and I even talked about this on our show, I think the reason why that happened was there was no events throughout the year. So there was a lot of budget, not only for Microsoft, but every company that was trying to promote their products. So why not invest that and send it out to content creators, big and small?
Sure.
It doesn't have to be the big ones, you know? So I think that's why Microsoft did that and sent all those consoles super early, you know? So they have different waves. So we were like in the first wave when we got the console during that time.
So there was probably limitations on what parts of the experience that you could actually talk about. Was there any limitations, or was it pretty much open to you reviewing all parts of it, software and hardware?
Well, it was one of the longest NDA embargoes that I ever seen. So there were it was planned. So it was certain things I was allowed to talk about every week. So for the whole month of October and also November, there was stuff to talk about every single week, you know. So it was cool. It was going, but the day that I recorded that surprise to our community member, I released it the day of the embargo, where everybody was talking about the console, but I did something different. I wanted the
consumer
community member to talk about it, you know. So that content got the most attention out of a lot of other content creators out there, because it was something different, you know. It was getting feedback from one of our community members, you know. So and it was
breaking
cool
news, right? I mean, you were breaking details on features.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the good thing is, I'm happy that Microsoft allowed me to do that. You know, they gave me permission.
So what other strategies are you taking to reach new audience now that maybe you didn't do before the COVID?
That's a good question. Besides the content, last year, a lot of the gaming websites, major gaming websites, has been contacting not only me but also my co-hosts, and we've been also guests featured like on different websites or different podcasts, and that helped us to get a whole new audience to be on their shows too, and
Right. Okay.
that helped us out a lot. Yeah, besides of the content.
One thing I'm looking at is CES is always a big content time for me. Typically I would be gone. I would be in Vegas right now.
Right.
And we would be setting up the broadcast studio tomorrow, or actually would be set up today, and we'd be ready to go live tomorrow for all the media events and, be ready to rock and roll. And I would have started in early November, starting to book guests, because we put 200 people through the door in 5 days. They get 15 minutes and boom, bing, 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 bing. It's a machine. I would have probably 4,000 emails that would have already hit my inbox. So far, I've kept track this year, and CES starts on Monday, the virtual event. I've got exactly 300 emails in my CES folder. So it tells me that this is like the mother lode for us. We do 7 million views on all that content, and it's like the gift that keeps on giving. It feeds the shows that are involved for a whole year. And one of my team members is working on our live stuff for next week, but it's nothing. There's no outreaches. And I've been telling companies, don't send me your press release on the 11th. You should have sent it to me 3 weeks ago so we could have it prepped and ready to release. And I don't think companies are really fully understanding how to handle this time we're in, because the PR people would be ringing my phone off the hook. Come see me. Come, we want to see you.
Right.
So now every time there's a new someone sending me a product announcement, I'm like, I'm not doing anything unless you send me product. Send me product, and I will send it back if you want it sent back. But I got a demo room set up here, all this stuff ready to go to do hands-on with their stuff, with them on a screen just like that, and they don't get it. So I'll bring you in via Skype, bring you in via Zoom or whatever, and we can have a conversation about the product. Now I have it right here, and their minds are blown. They don't get it. So I think a lot of companies are having, there's probably a business there. I think that a lot of companies are having challenges in trying to get the word out. But I'm glad Microsoft, at least in your point, Danny, was progressive enough to say, man, we need to, this is not going to be the same type of a launch. This is going to be a digital launch.
And it's not only Microsoft. One thing that I also noticed last year that helped out not only for us but a lot of the other content creators of color is when the whole protest of Black Lives last year. Like I was really involved with that, and other content creators in the gaming industry. We noticed a change that now companies are hitting up not only the well-known content creators, but also up-and-coming content creators. Because, look, for me, back then when I started in 2005, it was challenging for us to get the word out about the podcast. Like, I remember going up to a couple of companies at E3. They looked at me weird, and they asked me how many downloads. I'm like, no, we don't want to work with you, So that was challenging back then. And there's people still to this day that they don't know what to do, how to do it, how to get connected, especially now that we're not going to events. How can they do it? And one of the advice I tell people is continue creating content, do it the right way. I'm not saying to be, kissing butt or anything like that, but just be yourself, and I think once you start connecting with other people through social media, that maybe they'll start working in the industry. They're going to give you the opportunity. A lot of people have been blowing up, especially in 2020, because now companies like PlayStation, Microsoft, Nintendo, even third-party companies are now changing the way how they market and how they're promoting their products to people. It's not how it used to be back then. Oh, let's just send a press release and that's it. Like you said, Todd, to me, the best experience is having the hands-on.
Gotta have it.
It's gotta have it. Like that to me is like the right way. And I'm talking to my community. Yeah, it's not in the millions like a website like IGN, right? But we in my opinion, my website, my podcast, we talk to a crowd that I feel an IGN or a bigger website can't reach. They trust us in a different way than another major media outlet. So I think
if something
that's why
sucks, you're going to tell them it sucks.
Right.
Yeah.
It's called trust and authenticity is the big thing. One other thing that kind of symbolizes this change that's happened is, I don't know if you guys heard last week, but StreamYard got acquired for $250 million.
Yeah.
That's a sign of how things have changed in a dramatic way. And look what's happened to Zoom's business. I mean, their stock's going through the roof. It's this shift that's finally happened. Todd, you and I have been doing this show for 10 years, right? Finally, the rest of the world's kind of catching up here, and it's catching up fast.
It's true.
And your example of CES is an example of companies that are still struggling with this concept of doing things online more.
The story I like to tell too is, in the early days of GoPro, the first year GoPro went to CES, they got just a handful of interviews. They didn't get many. And I went in there and spent time, and we talked with their CEO and their product manager. And we spent time, like 2-3 hours in that booth. Mm-hmm. And then they exploded. But they always remembered, that opportunity that we had taken with them to cover what they were doing. And I remember some of those videos getting massive download, or massive. We released it as a podcast and released it on YouTube, and those videos did wonderful. And but what happens with these companies is GoPro got big really fast. I went from the 20 by 20 to 100 by 100. Boom, they went to a big booth.
They blew up fast. Yeah.
And so then the PR people came in, and I'm sure, Danny, you love the PR people. Because then they become the gatekeepers of access to content. They're there to protect executives and everything else. And I'm like, hey, tell so-and-so I'm here. And he give you that look, I'm like, please go tell him I'm here. And they would walk in the back and tell him, and the guy would come out and grab me, and next thing I'm in VIP having a sandwich, and we're sitting back, kicking back, talking about new product releases. So it's, in my opinion, PR people have not yet adopted either, because for years I was getting business, and for those of you that don't do any events, for me, I don't have an example here because I have a business card laying here, but when I would do an interview, I'd get a business card, and it would be the CEO, it would be the product manager, it would be director of sales, whoever it was. But then time shift, and I would get the PR agency's business card. I'm like, no, this is no good. I want his business card. So we made it a requirement, and our green room person specifically asked, because otherwise we would end up with junk, So I got very, very frustrated. It's part of the reason we scaled back stuff that we were doing at CES, was because the PR people were doing more harm than good when it came to, we're there to give these people. I've spent $25,000 to bring a team, and I got another month's worth of work after the show to put this stuff out, and you're restricting me access? Samsung, I'll never go into another Samsung booth, because of how they treated us. They let it. So I don't know. Danny, I don't know if you run into that at the events you go to, but it was part of my frustration. But now they have no choice because we're not there. The smart ones are reaching out, and
yeah, you know what's the most challenging part is you have a group of PR team that from a company, you have a strong relationship with them, but in every industry they move around, they go everywhere. So every time they leave, a new person comes in. And maybe it's a younger person that doesn't know anything about us podcasting for a long time, and we have to start from scratch because we have to start building our relationship again with them and everybody else that started working for any company, so because everybody started moving around. But here's the positive thing is that every industry is small, and other people will recommend, hey, you should talk to so-and-so, you should get the opportunity, let them review your product, do an interview. So it goes around a lot, man. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, a lot of those larger PR firms, they're basically there to filter access to only the larger media entities. That's been the old model, and a lot of them were doing it for risk and reward basis, right? So they were seeing their clients as only wanting them to direct them to the bigger media outlets, right? So when Todd walks in the door, he's not seen as CNET or something like that, and that's why they treat him like that. And that's not very enlightened view of of how to treat new media, because new media has a lot more influence than a lot of PR companies realize. I don't know, Todd. That's probably exactly what you've experienced.
Yeah. So just so you know, Danny and Rob can see me, but I had Rob on the main screen and I was waving at our guest. My cat decided he wanted to try to interrupt our show again, Rob. So he's not banished to the kitchen right now, but he's about to be, anyway, he was stepping on the mixer.
Todd, you should get your cat his own microphone here and come and join us.
I need a plexiglass box to put over the mixer because it's up high. So your cats like to be up high, and
that's right, and walk across right?
Stuff.
Change all the settings.
Hitting the solo button. Yeah, but anyway, jeez, my God, that just happened twice this week. So anyway, I think that the PR companies that adapt and understand that. For those of you that have never went to an event, it's one of my 13 things every podcaster should do. So you should be going to events that are in your space. If you're a gamer, you need to go to gaming events. If you're in business, you need to be going to business events. You need to find out where your industry's at, and you need to go there and talk to them, and it'll help your show. But I learned this out long time ago when we were doing that, when we started doing that with Tech Podcasts and doing those events. It just added this whole new dynamic. You make these connections. I've got 5,000 names in in my Rolodex. It's probably not a right word anymore. Contact list. And obviously those people move around, but like Danny said, there is some re-education, but some people, they're at companies a long time, and those inside connections are really, really important.
Yeah.
When you're trying.
Yeah, you know what? One thing that helped us out was, we had a strong relationship with PlayStation back in the early days, right? And like I said earlier, a lot of people left, move around, and everything, right? And one thing that helped us was our name got bigger and bigger throughout the years. And this year, they contacted us, and they also sent us their console, the new console, PlayStation 5, before it came out. So they sent it to my co-host, and they sent me all the launch games for me to try out before it came out too. So, eventually, if you start creating content, good content, and you start building relationship, it's going to go around, and companies eventually are going to contact you. You just got to give it some time, and like you said, Todd, CES is coming out now on Monday. Why not, if you have a show that talks about just TVs or talk about just tech or anything, why not sign up and attend the event virtually, and you get contacts from all those companies, and I think that's going to help you out too. But if you just create content, don't interact with nobody, just spamming everywhere, that's not going to help you. You're going to miss out a lot of big opportunities because of that, because you're not branching out. You're just stuck in depending on so much on just spamming and the numbers, and that's it. So you got to think outside of the box, I think.
When the show was a little smaller and I was 5 years younger, I would walk the floor with a camera. So I had a couple guys with me or whoever was supporting, and we'd walk every lane, because it was that 10 by 10 guy that's there's got his credit card maxed out. He's got a prototype, or he's got his first product, and he's the guy that you're like, holy cow, look what you have done. And no one else is going to find him unless you're walking the halls, because he doesn't have a PR team. Him and his wife are in the booth, or his sister or something, because he can't afford to pay anybody. And those are the type of folks that when I go to events like that have, and again, you walk by some stuff and you roll your eyes like, well, that was done 5 years ago. But at the same time, you run into stuff that you're like, whoa, And CES was real good about setting up an innovation area where you could go and look at all the innovative stuff. And for us, for my personal show, it's just a gold mine of data, but not everyone's doing a tech show or a gaming show. So some of you may have a little bit harder trouble finding that event to go to, but there's got to be an event in the industry that you're doing your podcasting. There's an event for everything, but not right now, but maybe next year.
Yeah, so you know what happened to me? So I moved from Miami and I went back home to New York 2 years ago or so, right? And I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to meetup.com and I'm just going to search podcasts to see if there's any type of meetup or any type of events. I'm just going to show up, not saying anything, I just want to meet people, So I did that and I went to a couple meetups and they had no idea, no clue that I was a podcaster.
No idea.
No. So I just sat down and everybody having advice and I'm like, oh man, that's some bad advice. And I'm just quiet, not saying anything. So then eventually I told them what I was doing and told them about my history and the podcast, and then everybody, okay, we definitely gotta talk, Danny, and this and that, So
Right.
But it's good to do that. I will just go out and just go to meetups, random meetups, because I want to see where everybody their head is at when it comes to podcasting. Another thing is, like I said, interaction, that face-to-face interaction. I love doing that all the time. So, but even if there is an event locally, go. You don't have to go to Las Vegas. There's always, especially like in New York, there's a lot of events before all this been going on,
right
before quarantine. They will always have events over there in New York, and I would just show up. And there's people that I met throughout the years that now they work in that industry, in tech, right? And I'm like, wow, and they know me, and but I built that relationship before they started working at any company, So you got to start doing that, man. I think that's going to help you out for upcoming podcasts.
The problem though, Danny, is that when you're sitting in the back trying to keep your mouth shut and bad advice is being given, it's so hard just to bite your lip and bide your time, because you don't want to be that dude, that, no, you're wrong. No, that's wrong, because then you become an antagonist. So, yeah, if you're an experienced podcaster and you go to an event, just hold your breath.
Oh, well, I'm going to say a story, but I'm not going to mention the name of the person, because this person is really well known in the political area,
Right,
so
right.
Politics. People know him and her in the politics area. So I got hired for consulting work, when it comes to podcasting and stuff, and I didn't know that person was going to be there too. And this person was saying, oh no, you need to release, if you're going to launch a podcast, you have to have a certain amount of episodes, because when you release a certain amount of episodes, let's say 5 in the first day, because you're going to be in the top of the charts, and then you're going to go on the new and noteworthy. And I'm like, well, first of all, I had to stop the conversation. I'm like, no, this is too much. I can't let them one slide. So I said, look, first of all, that doesn't matter. What matters is you have your content released once a week. Release like a trailer, like a little promo, right? That's good. And then release your episode, but save that content. So you have that week where everybody is still downloading your content. People are sharing it, and then slowly release the other one. And that's content for you. It's like you just releasing content like that as a person that just started is the wrong way. The other thing is new, noteworthy, anything like when you're featured on the front page, that's manual. That's the team that will select a podcast that will put them on the front page. Like iTunes put it up, our show on the front page, because we asked them if it was okay for them to do it, and it was all up to them.
Mm-hmm.
That was not because we were like on the top of the charts or we have so many downloads. No, it's because, again, that relationship that I've built throughout the years.
Right.
Spotify did the same thing.
It's all editorial, right?
Yeah. Look, I remember this year when everybody was just stuck home still, when it first started, right? I went to Spotify and I noticed they had like a COVID area where people could get the news, they get like different podcasts about what's going on, but also they had different genres there. It had tech, they had video games, and they put us in there too in that section. So if there's gamers that are stuck at home and they're bored. Hey, go to Spotify. Look, these guys on the front page. Like I didn't send that request to Spotify to do that.
Right.
They did it on their own. On their own, they did that. So we can't let that on slide, Todd and Rob. We can't let companies, or not companies, consultant people that so-called been in the industry for so long in podcasting giving bad advice to people, because I think that in a way is gonna hurt our industry, because now companies are spending so much money thinking, oh man, so and so is getting 100 million downloads. Oh, let's see how many people are gonna buy our product. Believe it or not, having a small group of listeners that are just that are very huge supporters, even if it's 100, 500 people that listen to the show, that they want that 10, 20 people that download your show and buy their product. That's better, in my opinion, than someone that has over 100 million downloads and not getting no type of like sales. So I just want to say, because it's so frustrating when I hear that advice from people.
And if you're a PR person,
Yes.
you just got smacked in the head 5 times. I've been saying the same beep thing for the past 15 years. Smaller audience, there's more engaging, there's more ROI out of it. The audience appreciate, number one, that you're taking the podcaster and you're recognizing him and maybe even sponsoring or giving him product or whatever it may be, versus I told this story on the show a couple of weeks ago. I had a $20,000 ad spend, one spot on a particular high-profile show, and I made the company sign a piece of paper where I told them they will get no performance out of this deal, and they can't ask for a refund, can't ask for a make good or anything. That one ad spot run, and they got zero referrals, and they came back later and said, "Oh, then we want some make goods." I'm like, "Here's a piece of paper you signed when I told you." So, man,
and that's something, because I'm reading the chat, and I know someone said that being featured is not grow your show. I 100% agree. That's not the reason why we became even bigger because of that. Because honestly, what helped us, for me, was engaging with the audience.
Yeah.
Engaging with people. Like I said, going to events and start getting opportunities for us to get hands-on with different products before it came out. That what helped us. I'm just giving an example that yes, we've been featured a couple of times on our show, like on iTunes and Spotify and all the platforms, but that doesn't mean that's the reason why we grew. That it's cool. People will see us on the front page, and maybe we'll get a small group of people that are new listeners, but the content is the key. It's the engagement is the key. It's not, hey, I'm on the front page. Right. So
yeah.
Well, it's also getting on other media too. I know, Danny, you've been pretty successful in getting on other shows and other media properties that can give you exposure to new potential audience, right? And that's been a strategy that I've done over for many, many years. Is I don't turn down any invitation to join somebody on a podcast. I mean, as a guest, everybody, and I'm always open to that, just because of that principle that I've lived under for a long time. I've done TV, I've done nationally syndicated radio show interviews, I've done all sorts of stuff, and you have to just be open to all that. And I know and that's what a lot of PR people think now, is that you only, I'm going to get my client on the biggest radio show, and everybody else just isn't relevant, right? But it's the accumulation of the small shows and the big shows is what really makes an impact. And I know you've done, Danny, some recent things that I've seen on social. I don't know if you want to talk about some of that and how you were able to get on some of these other shows.
Yeah, one thing I've been testing out for the past couple of years is, because look, I'm bilingual, I know Spanish, so a lot of the major media outlets that has nothing to do with gaming will contact me because they want me to talk about games on their show, right? So I've been on TV all over Latin America. I've done that plenty of times throughout the years. I also, this year, I started working with Telemundo, and I did a couple of segments for them about gaming, because again, they don't have no experience about games, right? About video games. So they wanted me to talk about the next gen console. Then I had Keanu Reeves on our show, and also I had that also for Telemundo. So it's good to do new things that, especially for me in the Latin America market, or in the Hispanic market here in the U.S. You know, I had a conversation with someone that works in the industry. He's PR, right? And we were talking about what I was doing that for like other outlets in the Spanish market, and he was like, "Danny, you know what's crazy? We had a game that we wanted to promote to the media, right? Especially Latinos, and guess how many people throughout the whole country we found that does this type of content in Spanish?" And I'm like, "How many?" He was like, 3.
Whoa.
I was like, wow, people are missing out. You know what the problem is, Rob? I think everybody is always following the trends, and they're not thinking about doing new things outside of the box. You know, right now is the hot thing. The hot thing now is what? Clubhouse. Everybody, I'm Clubhouse, right? That's the thing. Look, it's cool, it's there, but I'm not gonna go use Clubhouse just because. Let me try the new things. Nah, I'm always thinking outside of the box. When you're unique and doing something new, that's not only gonna help you, but that's gonna help our industry. And we gotta stop following trends, man. You know, try new things. Something is gonna work. Something is not gonna work. You know.
Danny, you get into Clubhouse and to go into some of the podcasting groups, you'll end up like me.
Oh, well, no, I'm a
I know.
Guys,
I was just teasing you.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of a contrary view on Clubhouse. My experience over there is that it's just like anything else, right? At like a trade show or conference, if you want to have good information put out over there, we got to get in there and do it. We can't let these folks that don't have experience in there share with new podcasters how to do this stuff. We got to take an active position, and that's what I've been trying to do over there. Is get in there and share what the real information is about how to do this stuff, and not leave it up to someone else to do that maybe doesn't know.
You know, the problem though, Rob, is it's now what do we have to follow? Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
Yeah, I agree.
Get in the Facebook
hard.
Groups. We have to be, all this other stuff. We're all this.
It's the whack-a-mole that we've been playing a long time, Todd, right?
But here's the thing I've run into, and Danny, maybe you're not. You're a pure podcaster. I'm a podcaster, but I'm also a podcast host owner. So when I come in and say something, it's like, he's
biased, right?
It's your opinion because you've got an agenda. Well, no, Rob and I trade customers. We all trade customers. It's going to wash out the way it's going to wash out. We want what's best for the podcaster. I send people to Libsyn. Rob sends people to me. It's the way it works because we want it, whatever's best for the podcast. But podcasters don't get that.
Well, and sometimes podcasters feel like they need to change.
Right.
I mean, this happens more often than anything where podcasters feel like they need to change hosts. And I ask them, why? Why do what you're getting right now, whether it's Blueberry or wherever, is meeting your needs, right? Why do you want to put yourself through that?
And it's often because my show's not growing fast enough. And then you're like, let's do a 30-minute consult. And you're like, you go to their website and you can't even find a place to subscribe to their show.
Sure, it's contrary to to some degree, what's best for Libsyn or what's best for the company I work for. But at the end of the day, my responsibility is to do what's right for the podcaster at the end of the day and build their trust. Yeah. And the way to build their trust is to look at what they're doing and say, changing hosts isn't going to grow your show.
Right.
If that's what your goal is. Now, granted, if you're wanting to do something technical with your show, maybe being here or there may be the right choice. But that's the only time.
One thing that I notice a lot of people do is they launch a show, they notice they're not getting no engagement, or they don't see their show on the charts or whatever. So they'll delete that show, relaunch another show, thinking it's going to help them grow. And it's like, no, that's not. First of all, it's going to be a hard. It's going to be difficult for people that's trying to discover new shows are going to find you because you're always shutting down your show and trying to relaunch another one, and it's just it's just a bad advice. And honestly, look, I'm not saying that Clubhouse is like a bad thing.
Right.
I'm not saying that. I'm just giving an example that I am just tired of, and I've never been this way. I'm tired of people just following their friends, man. It's the truth. Is
We
it true,
totally
man?
sympathize with you. Right.
But
Yeah.
You could be successful without following the trend. Just be yourself. I think that to me is a better, more like a better success story than just like, hey, Clubhouse and front page and this and that. Like, no, man, you could be successful without all those things, man. Like, uh, uh, what's his name, man? He has the podcast network of all about horses.
yeah, Glenn. Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing things that nobody else is doing, and he's fine. Like he's
Yeah.
doing good.
He's knocking it out of the ballpark.
That I would like to see more of that.
Yeah.
More of that. So
And I
Well,
think I did.
It's focusing on the fundamentals, I think, right? Also, to some degree, right? People keep chasing the shiny thing instead of focusing on what may be perceived as hard work. I mean, some of this stuff is not always glamorous, right?
Right.
But when you get that breakthrough, it can make a huge difference. And sometimes you don't know when it's coming. I know that happened to my radio show many times. Like I got a listing, I didn't know it was coming in PC Magazine as one of the top web shows on the internet. And that just spiked my my audience. And then I got on the day of 9/11, my show that I was doing back and then had more listeners on 9/11 attack. I still have no idea why that happened than at any other time in the 6-year history of that show. It's just people were looking for information online. So sometimes those growth spurts happen in very unexpected times and ways, and you can't always predict it, but you got to put yourself in a position where you can be found and you're consistent and people trust you and rely on you to even get those opportunities. And sometimes you just don't know when they're going to hit.
Going back to what you said, Danny, about being tired, I understand because
I do too.
It's here's the thing. We've all been living and breathing this thing 15, 16 years.
Right.
And we've seen stuff come and go. And yeah, maybe we just need to hire some 18-year-old mini-me's, and let them go do that other stuff, And so you got all the new stuff. I'm going to, I don't want to say we're old curmudgeons, but the basis of building a show and building your brand and the longevity and doing the grind and doing the work and doing all the things, the radio, the television, we've all done all of that. But when I tell a podcaster that I was for years on BBC, when I was living in Hawaii, they would call me. BBC Asia would call me, and I would be at 3 o'clock in the morning. Mr. Cochran, hey, can you be on the radio here in 15 minutes? We want you to talk about this. I may not have had a clue what they wanted to talk about, but there was Google, and I had 10 minutes after I had shook the cobwebs out of my ears to be able to Google, and I could talk for 3 minutes on any topic. Didn't matter what. But guess what I got? I got to plug in BBC Asia. So you just have to open yourself up to any opportunity that's available and put yourself up. But I wouldn't have got BBC Asia unless I'd been on MSNBC doing stuff during live at CS. I wouldn't have got BBC. There's all these things that we did for the show that we wouldn't have got otherwise. And when I tell people that you can't just do your podcast, you got to do more stuff.
Right.
yeah.
And you have to get involved in the community that you're in.
Yeah.
And Danny, you're a perfect example of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing too, like I stopped going to a lot of podcasting conferences. One, because I was super busy, I couldn't really attend. But another thing is too, every time I'll go to an event, I'll see speakers that are giving bad advice, and I'm like, not against to the owners of the different conferences, but why are you giving opportunity for people that are hurting our industry? Why? What is the point? Is it because they look popular, or maybe because of their stats or fake stats? I don't know, but
A lot of fake stats.
But it's like we have to stop doing that. Why not get speakers, big or small, that are doing the right things that's going to help our industry? That's the part that I eventually I'm going to stop supporting people that are going to be supporting people like that's hurting us, because we've been working hard for so many years, and there's people that just started and giving bad advice for those that are up and coming, and I feel like they are taking advantage of them, and after a while, when you, Todd, like I've seen this many times, when you are vocal online, people are like, oh, it's those older podcasters that are complaining and this and this and that, right? But here's the thing.
Mhm.
Yes, we're old, but it's like we've been through it. We've seen it all. We've seen the bad, the good, and we're just giving advice, and we want our industry to grow even better. Hey, Todd, I'm not saying that we're perfect or anything like that, but hey, just listen. Let's have a conversation. It's not about an agenda or anything like that.
I had to take a break, Danny, because it felt I just made a decision. You can't save them all. And
Yeah, you can.
so I made a decision to pull back a lot out of social media because you not criticize, but give advice, even though it's good advice, then you turn into be this old asshole. And so it's, so for me, I had to just pull back and we hired a social media person that was doing all the social media stuff. And, but yeah, it's hard because I want to be in there in the fight, I want to tell them why you shouldn't do that. I don't, again, many of the times it's not who you host with. It's why, this is my problem.
Yeah.
Give you an answer. And so.
Well, and I also want to foster new leaders in the industry too. I mean, and we want these new leaders to have the appropriate knowledge and have that experience that they can share with others too. So I think growing the base of new, experienced, younger leaders in the industry is important as well, because us three are not going to be around forever, and this industry is going to continue beyond our generation, right? So, who's up and coming, and I think about that a lot. Is that who are the leaders that are being fostered right now that 5 years from now can do the right thing in this medium? Or, I mean, I'm struggling to see who that is right now, and I guess I'm maybe that's a wrong observation.
Rob, what we're seeing is because we're getting so big, is there, we used to go to conferences and we all say, hey, high five each other and have a beer in the counter. But now I see 25, 30, 40 people that I've known over the years, and then everyone else is like, who are you? And so what I've seen is clusters, and there's usually a cluster of content creators that are on a certain topic, and there's usually, I wouldn't say a kingmaker in there, but there's usually someone that is kind of like what most of those people follow, and the philosophy of it is, and I'm not against saying that there's new ways to do things, because I'm not, I want to be an old dog, and I want to be taught new tricks. I want to be able to learn new angles.
Well, that's why we're still involved in this medium, is that we have been able to adapt and improve and get better, or else we wouldn't be still doing what we're doing. But I just want to see, it's been something that I'm really happy to see when I see someone that, that I knew 5 years ago that was just getting started in this medium and has achieved success in this medium, and is also out there sharing with others and helping others too, and that's what, Danny's done a terrific job of, because he was one of the early ones that have done that. But, where are we seeing the new Dannys come up? I mean, are you guys seeing them out there?
And I've been seeing it in our industry, in the video game side, right? Like, yes, I attend events and I go to these other events, and I'm like, wow, I'm like the oldest person in this crowd, But here's the beauty part, man. Like, I feel like, yes, we need that new blood in our industry, because I want to get motivated again, man. I want to see stuff that maybe will help me to come up with new ideas, because this person that just started it, recently or something, that, man, it worked out for them, and I'm like, man, I probably could change it up and do it this way. Like, it's okay, I want that, but once we have new people and they're following the same folks that are just giving bad advice every single time, and then everybody start copying because so-and-so is popular, let me change my podcast similar to their show, because maybe that's going to help me pump up in the search engine. And it's like, how's that helping? You're copying. How's that helping you, and how's that going to help our industry? But if you start doing new things that nobody's doing, I think that's to me, that's powerful. I'm like, wow, I want to do the same.
Right.
I want to do something different and cool like that, man. Something new. So
Right.
I want to see more.
I think too is, and I'm trying to keep my train of thought here because you just said something pretty profound. Okay, so I do up to 5 podcaster consults a week, and it's 30 minutes each. I don't always do 5. Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 5. And the question I always end most of those consult calls with is, who are you listening to? What podcast in your genre are you listening to? And 9.9 out of 10 times, they're listening to no one in their genre. They're not listening to the top 10 or top 15 shows. And to me, I'm like, if I want to get better, I am going to listen to who's on top of the game, and I am going to copy, steal, adapt. I am going to take a piece from every one of those, and I'm going to put those into my show because obviously what they're doing is right. It's working. Now, maybe a person still doesn't have a good personality. Maybe that's the case, but if I'm the guy or gal that's trying to build a show, I'm listening. I listen to 100 new podcasts about every 2 to 3 weeks now, but I have a core list of top shows in the tech space and the podcasting space that I listen to religiously, and I cringe to them and cuss and swear, and I'm like calling out BS or whatever whenever I hear that, but I'm taking away things that they're doing and maybe bring it to the show, bring it to the other one.
No, I think that one of the things that's happened because of COVID is I think that the podcast community has gotten a little weaker because of this, because people are not getting together quite as much.
It's been happening.
Danny, you were on the call yesterday with Chris from Podfest and that group call that we did. That's one of the rare examples of the podcast community kind of getting together. We're so separate from each other now, and I think that hurts. That hurts the industry, I think, as you look to the future, because the interpersonal sharing that goes on at Podcast Movement and these events is core to the proper development of this industry.
Man, I'm very surprised you said that, Rob. Because this past year I haven't really been focused so much on the podcast industry. I was more of like, okay, I'm busy with my show.
Right.
Here I've been reading, but here's the thing: out of the 16 years, 2020 was the year that we were like the most busiest, and we didn't go to any event at all for us. And the reason is we were just constantly just being busy, creating content, doing a lot of interviews, doing stuff for other TV networks and so on.
Yeah.
And it was the busiest year for us. So when you said that, that's kind of disappointing seeing that, man, because now it seems like a lot of people just gave up because they don't see results. They're not going to events. It's pretty sad to hear that, man.
It is. It's one of those things that there's a lot of new pockets, and this is what I've seen in Clubhouse. In there's a lot of creators that have jumped into podcasting, and they really have nobody to go to talk to about what they're doing, right? So they're out there flailing. They're talking to other people that are new too, that don't really know anything either. And those are the opportunities that I'm seeing, when I get into Clubhouse and get involved in that and have a session or something like that, I'm able to really share fundamentals about this industry that people are like, I'm amazed by the response that people have. It's like, wow, I haven't heard any of this before. I didn't even know that, right? Just this constant astonishment that there's so much depth of understanding and clarity on what this medium is all about. And there's just a lot of people that are new to it that just they're not getting it from their environment right now.
I think also too, Danny, you mentioned people quitting, and that kind of struck me like, wow, because what we've seen is, especially in the early days of COVID, it was just like everyone started a second or third show.
Right.
Companies were jumping in, and I'm thinking to myself all along, this is great. We're seeing, the company seeing good growth. We're doing well. Podcasting space is growing. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, what happens when they go back to the office? Now they've got 3-hour commute again, or 2-hour, and kids in soccer and whatever else going on. Will all those shows that were started while we're all essentially locked up
fade out? Will those be gone? And will we see essentially a podcast recession? And I think we will. But again, it might not happen until August or September of this year when people are. But Todd, AdsWiz put out some insights on some research that they had done. I don't know if you saw this or not, but there was some slides that they pulled together. Basically, one of them I wanted to mention here is staying home may mean more free time to invest in creative endeavors. Right? Okay, so I'm setting the stage here. What's the percentage of creators that are either launching more episodes with what they're doing, or they're keeping their productions about the same? So about 36% of creators are launching more episodes as they look to 2021. 48% of creators are keeping their podcast productions about the same, and 16% are planning on scaling back to fewer episodes. So based on this research, and then it says 65% of creators have found more listeners since March of 2020. 26% have had their listener counts remain the same, and 9% have lost listeners. So, those are all, I think, positive trend lines.
I can just look at it from the total statistics standpoint of what we measure and how we're adding people, and the multiples of, let's say, hundreds of millions of downloads have increased dramatically this year. So there's definitely more people listening by far than we probably have ever seen in the space. But at the same time, I wish I could have had another question add to that poll. What happens when you go back to work? Well, not everyone, those that can work at home are working at home, and some people can't work at all. But what happens when you go back?
And they're back on the road commuting or whatever, right?
Then,
like you used to do. You used to create content while you're driving down the freeway.
Yeah. I'm literally spending 3 hours a day in my car. It was a little hell on earth. So, Danny, my commute now is 11 minutes at 70 miles an hour. It's a beautiful thing.
Guys, one thing I noticed about 2020 is it's all about the content. And
True.
The reason why I say that is because pre-quarantine, people had expensive equipment, expensive recording equipment, video and audio, right? As soon quarantine started, you see all these TV networks, like, they don't even care if it's just a webcam or whatever. We need the content. So, hey, use your phone, use your cheap webcam, use your built-in mic. Let's have a conversation. We're going to put it on all these networks, ABC, CBS, and all these other places, CNN, all that, right? And that's all. And they figure it out. They managed to do that throughout the whole year. And guess what? Everybody was watching the news. Everybody was watching that network. It didn't matter if it was like the crappiest webcam while they interviewed someone. It worked. They had great conversations, and I think we have to start getting better on creating a better content than just investing so much on equipment and not having the content, because you could have the best mics, best camera, best everything, but if your content sucks, people are going to move on. Go to somebody.
But what's funny though is Rob and I joked about this quite a bit, because we were seeing all these guys with people showing their underwear because they didn't have pants on, and all this stuff that happened. That was on TV. They've gotten better. If you've noticed, the quality has gotten better.
They have gotten a lot better.
But you and I, Rob, we were laughing early on, like, hey, this is like, we're good. We've been doing this for a while. It's not like we look better than most television stations at the moment. So they did.
Because it really made mainstream media to be like us, right?
It did.
I mean, here we are striving to be like them,
Right.
right? And all of a sudden now they're like us, and I did have a reaction here with my own studios. I upgraded what I was doing to come a little closer to where I thought ultimately they were going to come back to, and that's what's happened. If you look at, a lot of the big channels or the big mainstream media channels, a lot of their guests that they're bringing in now have professional looking backgrounds now. Have you noticed that? And the cameras have gotten good, and their lighting is looking good, and they're all wearing lavaliers now. Instead of, in the early days, like you were saying, Danny, they were like talking into their Mac, and it was like, it was decent video, but the backgrounds were a little weird, and the lighting was all off, and they were like, paled out and stuff like that. But now they're all looking, sharp. They got the green screens and all this stuff going on right now. So it's definitely, because that's the standard of mainstream media, right? They want to have that polished look.
But at the same time, I may be the exception, but I do not consume mainstream media. I feel my blood pressure, my anxiety, everything going up. So it's just easier to. I saw a Facebook post the other day. Someone said it happened. There was two guys in a hospital room. And the guy that was making the comment on Facebook was a staunch conservative guy, and his roommate was a hardcore Democrat, and he was playing MSNBC for 3 days straight, 24/7. The guy said, "I just want to shoot the television," But so it's kind of like that, right? But mainstream media, I think podcasting. Danny, maybe you can weigh in here, but I think podcasting is the last bastion of free speech. Because we control our brands, we control our websites, we can put out the content, and it doesn't necessarily, and maybe it's not free speech, but independent content. I think it's all going to be king. I think this space is going to be king because while there's gatekeepers, while you can be delisted or deplatformed on stuff, you still can stay online and put your content out and not worry about being removed from an app or something. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
You know what? I always mention this on our show and on Twitter. I noticed that a lot of people depend so much on the platform,
right?
Instead of their content or their community. Like, look, if you let's say you exclusively just posting stuff on Apple Podcasts, right? Let's just make believe. Imagine you have to go somewhere else. If your community are fans of you and they trust your opinion, they just love your content, they're going to follow you. It doesn't matter where you're going to go. So like I noticed, especially in the gaming world, people will post only stuff like on YouTube, right, and stream over there. And then, hey, you know what? I'm going to Twitch now. Forget about YouTube. And sometimes a lot of people are afraid to do that because like, oh no, because I depend so much on YouTube. Is my community going to go? Are my community going to go to also Twitch because I moved, or they're just going to stop listening or watching my show because they prefer YouTube? So yeah, you're going to get a small percentage of the crowd that maybe they just love YouTube and don't like Twitch. But I feel at the end of the day, it's all about your community and your content. They're going to follow you no matter what. Even if you don't have iTunes, don't have Spotify, people are going to figure out a way to listen to your show because they just love your content. So like before, for me, back in the early days, I had to depend on people going to our website to listen to our show instead of third-party apps. Because at that time it was super confusing to just download a podcast. You had to be really hardcore fan of podcasts at that time in order for you to download podcasts. But if you make it easier for people to find you and go to the website and to just stream from there, hey, that's fine. That it's just that, Todd. I think people are depending so much on the platform, man. So
yeah,
and I'm becoming more and more anti-platform, and because I've always been, Moonbase Alpha. Where's Moonbase Alpha? GeekNewsCentral.com. Where's Moonbase Alpha? New media show. This is where this show lives and originates. Yeah, I want if you want to listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Google, where you want to listen, tune in. I don't care where you listen, but yeah, I think you're right. I think if they want to listen to you, that they will. Yeah, quit worrying about the platform. I think one gal said something the other day that triggered me, and I honestly I hate that word, but I'll say it because it did trigger me. And she said, "Well, I'm on Anchor and I'm on Spotify. I'm good. Where else do I need to be?" And of course, there was like an 800 comment section below that because people were, and I'm glad they waited and said, "Well, why aren't you on Apple Podcasts, or why aren't you on Google Podcasts, or why aren't you on Stitcher?" And but that podcaster was just fine being on Spotify. But I guess if her audience is, that's where her audience is, maybe she's okay. But
well, Todd, if she's doing a music show, she's not going to be anywhere else.
That's true. I don't think she was doing a music show.
Yeah. Yeah,
but this show is not. This show is not consumed on Spotify, but it's not the demographic for a show that's on Spotify. I'm sure your show does great on Spotify, Danny.
Yeah.
So, how do you guys do on Spotify, Danny? Oh,
I think we lost him. Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay, you're back.
I don't know what happened there. That was strange.
Yeah.
So we have a good audience on Spotify. A pretty good audience, and sometimes this is like once in a while. Sometimes we'll get more listens there than Apple Podcasts.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes Apple Podcasts is like always number one the majority of the time. So look, for me is one thing that have been helping us for people to find us is if, let's say, the episode that I have is about PlayStation. Let's just say, right? It's the title of your episode that people are going to search for that word, and it will pop up not only on like the music apps, right, or the podcast apps, but also Google. Google to us is like our best friend, man, because people will go back and listen to like older episodes based on whatever they're searching. It will pop up, So I think we also have to start naming our show that relates to your episode. Don't put something that only a certain amount of people will understand from your co-host, and everybody from the outside, they're like, how I'm going to find your show, So I always try my best to name the show depending what is like the most important topic that we have on our podcast. It could be about an interview that we have. It could be a topic. That's how people discover us. It's not because we're in the front page, So
those of you listening that have been here for a while, doesn't Danny sound like me and Rob? he gives the same advice. This just made my whole damn day, made my whole week, because it's like, and I'm not gonna say I trained you because I didn't. You figured this out on your own, but you get it. You got it, and
right.
Yeah. More power to you. It's like it's just I just So spread the word, prosper.
and you know what? Any conferences, any podcast conferences that would like for me to speak about this in the future, hey, let me know. I'll do it. We need more people like me and like you guys that we have great knowledge about our industry. Let's share that to the next generation. Let's pass the torch, man. It's not about an agenda or anything like that. I wasn't even planning to be on here. It was just, I was talking with Rob, like, hey, Rob, I would love to be on with you and Todd, man. Let me know. He's like, hey, join us tomorrow. I'm like, all right, that's it. Let's talk. And we're talking because we're so passionate about podcasting. We're passionate. We love our industry so much, and we don't want our industry to go down because of other people that are giving bad advice. Let's give out that great advice, and slowly people are going to learn more, and maybe we're going to be learning stuff too from other people that are doing new things. So I mean, I learned all this on my own. I learned editing on my own. I didn't go to no school. I edited. This is how I edited back then. I was editing using 2 tape decks. Pause, play. And I was super good at that I managed to do that also for my internet radio show back in the early days. And then I got better and better. Now I'm like a pro just editing, man. Like still to this day, I don't know what you guys use, but still to this day, I edit my show through GarageBand. Still to this day, and it sounds professional as hell.
Danny, I don't edit.
Yeah, Todd just doesn't spend the time to do that. Right?
No,
but take my time. I take my time editing.
But what's interesting here is, and here's what Mike and a couple of I think Sean is even watching today. 2 of my support guys, and Dave Jackson will probably weigh in the same if Dave was watching this. He'd be like, "But now when I tell people what the right way is to do, they tell me I'm wrong." So we have podcasters that call us for advice or for tech support, and they say, "You're wrong. That's not true. That's not right."
Based on what, though? Based on what? I want.
Usually based on bad advice they've gotten somewhere else or some preconceived idea. So, then my guys are kind of like, I don't want to be an asshole. I don't want to piss them off. And so they have to kind of thread this needle to explain to them, why maybe their reasoning is incorrect and maybe why this, and it can run the full gambit of things. It's not focused around one topic, but, just like the other day, I had a business guy called me Monday. And he said, I got this advice that I should have a separate website. I'm doing a show about my business, but my business has its own website. Doesn't it make sense to have my podcast on my business website instead of some other website? I said, yes. He said, well, I was told not to do that. So, it's just little things like that we deal with every day. That, as we grow this audience, and this show is now over 10,000 listeners per episode. It gets as high as maybe 15, 16,000. Those of you that are listening, you need to be our warriors. And, stuff that Danny says, Rob says, you need to be our warriors, the ones going out here and replicating the formula. This is what this show is for, is we're giving you a PhD in podcasting, and we want you to go out and replicate and share this with other podcasters.
I wish we had this back in the days when we started.
Oh.
I wish we didn't have that at all. I learned everything on my own. Like I said, I downloaded my friend's RSS feed. I would copy and paste. And I'm like, all right, let me just change it to my new show. And I was doing that every single week on Libsyn. I will upload the RSS feed every single time. Then I found out that not only Libsyn, but other podcast hosts now automatically will update. Right? I wish I would learn. And like now, you look. For those who are listening right now, you have the tools. It's so much easier now to create content, right? But the best advice I would say is, yes, if you want, try out, your Anchor, whatever. I personally will not use that, but go ahead, test it out to see how it is. But at the end of the day, don't use stuff that's all free just because it's free. Because one thing that I learned from back in the days for me is I had my show on mp3.com. And it was a lot of content that I had there, right? MP3.com ran out of money. They shut down. And me, like an idiot, I didn't download my content and everything got erased.
Extinction event.
And that's, let me tell you, that hurt. I mean, thank God I still have my original recordings from the tape. But, oh, man, I lost a lot of stuff, man, because I was depending so much on just free content, So, look, if you want to use free hosting, use that as more of like, test the water to see how it is. But if you really want to take podcast serious, invest on a podcast host. Invest on other tools that's going to help you to have your podcast even better. I always tell people that, man. So
well, it's also it's really about control. I mean, you use something for free, and part of what you pay for by using that tool is loss of control. That process of making things easier comes with some compromises, and that's the trade-off that you are making with that. So you pay for what you get, and you also get more control over what you pay for. So that's the thing to think about with that. And a lot of podcasters don't think about it from that perspective. They just think it's a free way to do something, and they also don't value it as much at the end of the day too.
I've done a few experiments. I always go look. We look at what competitors are doing. We all look across the space, and I've got a pretty damn good spreadsheet of everything broke out. But I also have my numbers, and I know what it costs to have benefits, salaries, all this stuff that goes around running a business. And when I look at competitors and I do the math, I'm like, and then I start the timer, 36 months, because I know that they're on the clock because they've got a business model that won't scale.
Isn't sustainable.
You get some of those hosts gets a Mark Maron type of person coming in, and they have a model that is, an all-you-can-eat model. All you can eat is exactly what's going to happen. That company's going to get 8, and then they're going to pull a stunt like some podcast host did years ago, 3 days before Christmas, and say, we're going out of business on Christmas Day. And people are already out, and 400 or 500 shows have an extinction event. They're done. They're gone. And back in that day, it was very hard to recover. There was really no contacts at Apple where you could get stuff updated. Now, at least we can go in and get a feed change through their team over there. So shows can be recovered if something like that happened. But you still have to have your masters, just like you had to have your masters, Danny. So,
not having a master's, I would have been screwed.
And I'm not, I don't want to talk bad about companies, but I just look at the pure math and know, where the end result is. But at the same time, there's companies doing cool stuff right now, and we look at it, and everyone else does, and that what just makes us all competitive and keep moving the bar forward. I am kind of curious. Have you been following anything about what's going on with Adam Curry and Podcast Index? Have you followed any of that activity?
I briefly, but I don't know much what's going on. Why?
Yeah, just curious if you had. So get a time, maybe check out what they're doing. They're trying to advance the space, and they've got, it's going to be hard because there's lots of headwind. But if anybody can do it, they can. So you just check out what they're doing. I give everyone advice to do that. So
yeah,
I'll definitely do that.
So, guys, I wanted to share one other little tidbit from this AdsWiz study that came out too, and the title of this one is "Growing and Monetizing Content Are Top of Mind for Creators," and this is like a ranking chart of what people are thinking about monetizing and growing their shows. And 59% of the surveys respondents said figuring out how to grow their shows. I think that just confirms what we already know. Everybody wants to figure out how to build their audience, obviously, as part of monetization, right? And about 19% said figuring out how to monetize their show was on their minds. And it says of the creators surveyed who were not currently monetizing their show, only 16% said figuring out monetization kept them up at night. And those who were currently monetizing, the monetization concern kept 27% of them up at night. So there's a lot of worry and a lot of, I guess, not understanding on how that process works. And about 11% said that they would like to have their publishing process be more efficient. So I thought that was interesting.
Call us. Rob, so let's back up on the money numbers. So What was the total percentage of people that were being kept up at night thinking about monetization?
Those that were already monetizing was 27%.
Those that weren't was 16?
16.
So my elementary math here, that's 43%, right? Did I get that right? That we're thinking about. So I've always said that 50% of the podcasting space does not care about monetization at all.
That's exactly true. Right. But 59% are concerned about how to grow their shows, which also is 40% don't care about growing their shows, right?
But
that's the inverse of that.
But that 59% are thinking to the future on if they grow their show, then maybe then they can get a sponsor.
Become monetized. Right.
So those numbers haven't changed much throughout the years.
No. And I think that 11% is interesting too, that only 11% are concerned about the publishing process and how efficient it is, which also I think is a good testament to what a lot of the platforms have already accomplished, which is making this process relatively simple.
Right. Yeah. Every minute. The way I looked at it, and Danny, I don't know how you guys, when I started my show, I had 3 young kids. Or actually 2, and then a third one there. For me, it was like, I got to get in, I got to get out, I need to get this thing up online. I can't spend 5 hours on this thing. I can afford 4 twice. So for me, it was all about efficiency and in time and trying to get the most done. Now, I'm lucky now I got a guy that does the show prep for me. No, I don't even have to do show prep anymore. So it's, I've gotten more time back, but I think a lot of podcasters, that's what kills a lot of them too, is the time that they invest. That's why I don't edit. If I would have had to have edited a show, I would not be here today.
No, let me tell you, for me, and this is one thing that kind of got me angry at an event. Someone asked me about this question. Multiple people always ask me this question. So back then, I used to work at this Discovery Channel, Latin America in Miami, and at the same time, I was doing my show. I love my job working over there. I love my podcast, so I was doing that for a while. And I will go to events and I will speak. And one of the most common questions is like, Danny, so if your podcast is so successful, why are you still working at Discovery? I just love TV. I love doing that, So to me, the podcast was always like a side thing, So back in 2017, I got laid off, and I was doing my podcast, and still to this day, I'm doing it full time right now. But if we don't get we get a lot of ads on our show, sometimes multiple in a week, and that's cool and all. But another thing that helped us out is speaking engagements. Like I get paid from that. I get paid on a lot of side projects that I never even talk about. So there's different ways to get money. If let's say you're starting to get an advertiser, they want to advertise on the show or something, right? Do it for cheap, for cheap if you want, just to start out, just to show people that you have a strong community that will buy their products or support you. It doesn't have to be, oh well, I have 1,000 or 5,000 downloads. Okay, now I'm going to charge this amount of money no matter what. Like, no, you have to do certain things. You have to sacrifice a lot of things, man. Sometimes it could be free, sometimes very low. And then once you start building your community, hey, charge even more, man. And you don't have to do this full time. You can do this on the side and get extra income while you're doing your 9 to 5. So
yeah.
I think a lot of people start their show and they think, okay, I'm going to get paid, I'm going to get rich because my show is the best show ever. And then once they see that they're not getting that in return, a lot of them just give up,
A lot of unrealistic expectations that sometimes are fed by people that have told them what's going to happen when they start a show.
Well, a lot of people are working jobs that they don't necessarily like, and they're hoping that doing a podcast can be something that can transform their life into doing something that they love to do. And I think it's a matter of aligning. I know I did that for many years when I got started in this too. I was working full-time jobs for tech startup companies when I was doing my radio show. And so I did the same thing, Danny. I mean, I worked full-time and came into the studio on my lunch breaks and recorded segments. And then at the end of the week, put them all together and put out the show every week, trying to build something to the future.
I built a business working full-time and taking meetings during
so you
lunch.
Did the same thing,
yeah,
Todd.
absolutely.
Right.
And people say, how do you get so much done? I didn't sleep. I built a show. I had building a show, building a business, raising kids, and working a full-time job. So 20 hours a day was the minimum, or 19. But
and Gary Vaynerchuk says the same thing. If you listen to him on his, he's talking to a lot of people these days, and he's saying the same thing. You have to commit. You have to, Danny did the same thing. Danny doubled down and made it happen for himself, and innovated and tried different things and got in, and just really dedicated himself to it. And you and I both did the same thing, Todd.
Maybe this is more of a universal term, but in Hawaii, it's like when you go to eat, you're going to go grind, you're going to go grind, have some,
Right.
But grind is what podcasting is, you got to grind. You got to dig in.
I'll tell you my grind, Todd. When I started my show, I did a bunch of flyers, and I was looking for my community. I was not waiting for them to find me. I will go to all the retail stores locally in Miami and tell people, hey, listen to my internet radio show. Listen to my show. Listen to my show. I never mentioned the word podcast. I never mentioned about like, hey, download on or iPod, because back then there was no
Right.
iPhone, but that I was just grinding, interview people, and I did that on purpose because I knew they were gonna mention to others, hey, so and so interviewed me. I'm in this show. Let's check it out. So that's how I got the word out, and it was local. It wasn't trying to promote my show nationally. I was like, no, let me talk to my community locally, and they are going to spread the word to other people, to their friends, to their cousins, family members, everywhere, worldwide. It's going to go out there. And that's how I managed to get the word out about our show, because I was grinding. I was not like, here's the show and that's it, which a lot of people do.
A lot.
They release their spam all over social media, and that's it. They sit down and just wait to see if it's going to blow up. No, you got to grind. That's just the beginning.
That's the beginning. And you got to grind. I tell podcasters, and actually, I've been told I shouldn't give this advice anymore, but I tell them, you got to do 2 years nonstop, no breaks. No breaks. You want to build a show? 2 years. 2 years of, if you are a celebrity, no, you don't have to do that for 2 years. You're already a celebrity. You already got mass. Of course, most celebrity shows suck anyway, but you have to do the grind, because when I started this, I was a poor piss ass blogger. I was a bad blogger. Maybe 300 a week would come read the website. So who was I? Nobody. Zero. I had there was no Twitter, no Facebook. None of that existed. So the only way you could get exposure was to grind and be involved in communities. I think we all get that. The three of us do. I know some people that are listening to the show understand this, but if you're a new podcaster, you got to grind.
I mean, that's why I got involved in radio in the early days. That was the only way to reach people back then.
Yeah.
To try and transition them over to a digital content product. So that's how I looked at it. I looked at it from a marketing perspective.
So we're over time already.
We are.
Yeah. I know. We've been 90 minutes. This is good. We could go 5 hours. Danny, we're not going to do 5 hours. We're not Adam Curry. Danny, I guess the best thing is I know everyone is a gamer. I'm not, because if I start gaming, I would not get anything else done. So I purposely don't game, because I know it's probably like, if I started doing drugs, I'd probably be a drug addict. It's just because it's one of those, compulsive, But anyway, Danny, where can they find Gamertag Radio?
You can find us on any podcast app. Just search for Gamertag Radio. You can search us also on Google, like we're everywhere. So, and we release 2 episodes every week. And you can follow me on Twitter. I'm very vocal there than any other social media outlet. So, Godfrey, Godfree, I'm there. And if you're Spanish, you might see me here and there throughout the year on Telemundo. I'm going to be creating more content for them from the gaming side. So I'm excited for that. So I can't wait. And next month is our 16th anniversary. So I'm working on a pretty cool guest to be on our show.
Awesome.
And I can't wait to announce that in the future. So I've been working on that for a year.
I've been seeing you hint it for a while. So I hope it comes through for you. So if they want to, there's a lot of podcasters there listening. If they want some consulting service, sounds like you're doing that. Is there a good way? Just reach out on Twitter or what?
Yeah, just search. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm always there. I always engage with people, man. So if you want to listen to our show, you can email us, because we always have this segment, or sometimes we do a whole full episode of just answering questions from people that are casual gamers, hardcore gamers. We talk about the industry, business, and you can hit me up through that too, man, on Gamertag Radio. And we'll try I'll try my best to contact you and reply. So there you go.
Danny, thanks for coming on. The last appearance was February 3rd, 2018. That's when you were on last with us.
Oh, yeah. So that was a promotion of my documentary.
Episode 198. I looked it up when we started. So very, very. I had more hair then. Very, very cool. I joined you in doing the the bald thing. So it was all because of COVID, because I couldn't give myself a good haircut. It ended up being all jacked up. So I said, forget it. There's not much hair left. Let's just take it off.
Hey, looking younger right there, man.
Just get Rob to join us. But Rob's got a good head of hair yet. So
I'm not going to be shaving anytime soon.
Why not, Rob? Come on. Give it a season. See how it works. We can all join the party.
The waters.
Well, I thought that there was a specific party for that, right? There is actually, I think, right? So,
Okay.
But anyway, yeah.
All right. So I'm Todd.
But yeah, I can be found on Twitter as well at Rob Greenlee, and you can send me an email, robg@libsyn.com. And no, it's been a great conversation, Danny.
Yes.
I'm glad that we were able to talk about something more positive other than some of the things that happened this past week. So that's good.
Yep, absolutely. Todd at blueberry.com or at Geek News on Twitter. And thanks for being here. We'll be back with you on Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern, 12 Pacific. So join us if you don't have nothing to do. If you're bored if you're done with Zoom meetings for the day on Wednesday, come join us.
Right.
And anyway, you can find us on all the different places. If you're not subscribed, go over to newmeshow.com and hit the subscribe button.
Danny's also doing 2 episodes a week, just like we are, and it's obviously working for him. So I guess we're going to continue with that, right?
Yeah, for now. I'm up to 5 episodes a week about what I'm doing. So that's
a lot, Todd.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
People will start getting sick of seeing our ugly mugs. So we'll know when the subscription numbers go down. It's time to go back to 1 episode. But
so the numbers are still going up for us doing this twice a week?
They're staying steady.
It's pretty consistent?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next Wednesday on the New Me Show. Everyone take care. We'll see you next time.
All right, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Todd.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. And technically, we're still on the air, so be careful what you say.
That was a great conversation, though.
Yeah,
I like
great.
Yeah.
And you know what? The best conversation is when it's not planned. And you just talk. I love that.
That's what we do.
That's exactly what we do here. So, yeah, there's not a lot of pre-planning.
We do the same exact thing. And honestly, our best interviews is like that, too. Our best interview. We might have